Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Oh, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Inside the Walls podcast. We've been away for a while, a couple of weeks, but hey, we're back, re-energized, and we're going to get started on a lengthy episodes from here on forth. Because in the blink of an eye, there, Matt, it will be the kickoff of the 2025 season. It's only 3 months and 9 days away from the kickoff of the 2025 season, so it'll be there pretty soon, because we thought you even mentioned in the last episode. It just felt like yesterday the season ended, and it's actually been over 2.5 months. So
Yeah.
we're literally halfway through the off season. So that's just where we're at. Jeff won't join us today. He is dealing with high school sports right now. So, but we're gonna have a fun episode, Matt. You're a little bit battling the weather, so it's gonna be kind of hard for you. Usually, when people are battling the weather, but great reporters, great insiders, and people who love the sport, they push through. That's how champions are made. Jordan dropped 60 points in the playoff game with the flu. Kobe did the same thing back in the day, winning the championship with the flu. Um, let's go win a championship. You think you can do that tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to do my best. It's been a rough week, but I'm trying to battle through. So we'll see what we can do tonight.
Well, on this episode, ladies and gentlemen, is pretty unique. We're having the director of media for the National Arena League, Stephen Shotola, on the show. He is a person who is connected with the NAL, many NAL organizations. He has connections and has done a lot of things for many teams in the league. He has helped. He was one of the founding creators of getting this show on with the NAL when it was just a random podcast. And he basically put that in the forefront under the old administration of Chris Siegfried and the ownership group of the Columbus Lions, Carolina Cobras, and the Jacksonville Sharks. And that's how Inside the Walls got into the NAL. But also, he has connections with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He does a lot of media productions. You'll see him everywhere. I'm very jealous of this man. He gets to fly to London, to New York, to Dallas, to Chicago, to Green Bay, wherever the Jags go, he goes. Problem is, he doesn't play on the field. So I can't blame him because of what they do on the field. He's a media guy, but I need some more wins there, Stephen. But no further ado, here's the NAL Director of Media, Stephen Shotola. Steve? You're muted. Let me unmute you. There you go.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. I think I should be able to figure that out on my own, but oh well.
You're the media guy. You should know.
Yeah. Yep. I was ready. I'm like, I'll hit the unmute button, but it's your show. I'll let you touch the buttons.
Yeah, I'm the captain now. You do all the stuff like press releases and sending emails out to every team and seeing what the commissioner does with transactions. That's your job. This is mine.
Rez is like texting me right now about fixing things. If you can text him, be like, hey, can you give Steven like a 30-minute break? He's live right now. So sorry, Rez.
Well, knowing Rez, he'll tune in the show and see, and he'll message the show because he's basically on every show. Just, you know how Rez is. You don't want to get on his bad side because you will catch a stray from him out of nowhere. That's his tradition.
Well, I should have known it's like 9:25, so he probably wrapped up practice. He just got home. So this is the time. I'm a night owl. A lot of the people that work with me through the league know my peak hours of performance are like times like this. So it's late nights and early mornings for what I do.
So a lot of caffeine, right?
Yeah, which is not a good thing, but yeah.
Well, you do have how can I say, you have a characteristic about you that a lot of people don't know. When people think about indoor community guys, they only think, oh, he works just for the league and that's it. you actually have the opportunity to work for one of the 32 franchises in the National Football League with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Your career is just an example of coming through the ranks of an indoor league with the Jacksonville Sharks. You worked with the organization in Jacksonville, worked your way up, and you went across the street to Everbank. Was it Everbank then, or what did? Or was it
TIAA,
Alltel?
but
Yeah,
yeah.
well, Everbank. Now you're with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Um, before we get into the NAL conversation, this episode we're doing, ladies and gentlemen, is then, now, and future of the NAL. Basically, Matt's going to take over the episode, and he's going to ask me and Shotola about the NAL from 2017 to now, how the league has grown, how the league is evolving, what we saw in the early ages of the league, and what we think is possibility of the future. What are we right now, and where our goals are for this organization. Me and Steve work a lot behind the scenes with ideas and type of situations to put forth to the league and see what we can do to promote this league. As you know, we are the only indoor football league that actually has a very continuous podcast that covers the league. I don't see the other ones to do it. That's the idea of this man down below me. He basically said the more content we can get out there, the more credible this league gets. So Matt's going to lead us in that about the then, now, and for. I don't want to say that WWE's little slogan. They may go copyright. Nope, can't do it. So then, now, and future. We're going to mix it up then. But Steve, you started with the Jacksonville Sharks.
Yeah.
As a avid fan like myself, we're Duval kids. We're here in Duval. We love our teams. But you're in the NFL. That's a goal for many players.
Yeah.
Also go for people in our industry. Like, you want to get to the big leagues. You want to get to the NBA, and the MLB, the NFL, the NHL, because that's where, honestly, you got to admit, that's where the money's at. Those are the superior leagues in this sport. Describe your journey from the Jacksonville Sharks, who are a prominent organization in our sport, to one of the top 32 organizations in the NFL.
Probably perseverance, I think, is the number one thing, and I think that goes from staff to coaches to players, because I think a lot of us have the same dreams. I remember being on all those bus rides with the Jacksonville Sharks, sitting with guys that were my age or younger than me, and regardless of position, if they were, a veteran player, like I sat next to guys like Devin Wilson and Cameron Solomon and all those guys with the Sharks, and the London, even going further back, like the London Crawfords of the world, that kind of took me under his wing and was like, hey, this guy's cool. Like, let him do an interview with you, because even in media, you got to make a name for yourself, and you gotta prove that you're worth players' time. And so that's exactly what I did. I always put myself in players' shoes whenever I was doing any work. So if I was writing an article, if I was doing an interview, if I was shooting video, I always thought not only of myself, because I knew this was going to benefit me, but is it going to benefit the guy that I'm interviewing? Like, if he just blew a play, I still got to interview him eventually at the end of the game. Like you see with players now in the NFL, like they can have a really bad game, but they still got to do an interview. But I would never ask a question that, if I was in their shoes, would this negatively affect them or hurt their careers or anything like that? And so I always kept that in mind. But also at the same time, I'm getting text messages from my boss, and I have people that I have to serve to get content out of people. Media is not a me thing. It's you take the M and you flip it upside down, and it becomes a we thing. So I'm a product of the coaches, the commissioners, and the players that supported my career all this time. And so I think I'm very fortunate that I got to live one of the dream stories of going from minor league to major league and things like that. And I think working with the NAL and working with a lot of the teams, and also just even supporting players that are no longer in the NAL, but still talking to them almost on a daily basis or weekly basis or whatever. And even coaches that are, NAL or left the NAL, things like that. I'm always able to provide really good insight because I've been around the game for so long. And I think I'm a good example of perseverance, of like never giving up. Like, just because you didn't make it in the NFL at 21 doesn't mean that you can't. And I'm talking about players, coaches, and staff. Just because you're not in the NFL at 21 doesn't mean by 31 you won't be. So, but it's all about continuing that goal, making as many connections as possible, and not hurting connections, I think was my point about interviewing players and things like that. Like never hurting my name or never hurting my reputation. I always took everything I did very seriously. And I got to work with some incredible coaches, whether it be directly at the team level or eventually I earned enough credibility that I got to work at the league level and I never gave that position up. And so I feel like I think it makes a difference when like a lot of people can reference you and be like, he's a good guy, or he's great at what he does, and that was at the mission. I never wanted to let anybody down, whether that be the president of the football team that I worked for or the player that I was interviewing that might not even be on the team tomorrow, but I still treated them like they were the same person. Just having very high integrity and just working really hard. But I think how I found my way into the NFL was just being really smart. I constantly worked really hard on perfecting my craft in video and technology. But with the Sharks, I was more media, and with the NAL, I was more media. I didn't really serve in a technology position. If anything, technology was one of four things that I did every single day to support the league and support the team. So I understood how to do streaming. I understood how radio worked because I had to, because I was the media guy. And when you work in the minor league levels, you don't get one job, you get 8 jobs and you get paid for one. And I think a lot of people watching that work for a lot of the teams in our league. And even from an ownership level or a high front office level, you could be team president, but that's not a very good definition of team president. You're doing ticketing, you're doing sponsorship, you're overseeing all this stuff. And yeah, there might be people under you, but you're still overseeing a lot of things. So I think I filled a lot of hats, and I might not have hit every hat perfectly, but enough to get enough attention at the NFL level where they were like, one, he knows what he's doing, and two, my reputation was he's a really good guy, you can trust him. And that comes from NFL people talking to NAL people. At that time, that's the truth. And so having that clean reputation of people just trusting my abilities, that's what it came down to. So I'm not saying that just because you're a good person, you're going to make it, but perseverance, hard work, and making sure that you keep your reputation as crisp as possible matters. Because I remember being on a Jacksonville Sharks bus, getting an email on my phone saying like, "Are you free on Tuesday?" Because towards the end of the arena football season is when NFL preseason starts, and I remember getting those emails saying like, "Are you can you come in for an interview with the Jaguars?" and things like that. So, and it was guys like Cameron Solomon that gave me the fist bump, like, go take care of this. Like, so having that support group and having the right people around you matters.
Well, again, when the NFL comes calling, you better not turn it down. You go to that meeting. Just saying.
And be
1010
prepared.
XL,
Yeah.
give a boy a holla. But
Yeah.
anyway. Matt, how are you doing over there, buddy?
I'm good. I'm just listening and kind of taking in some knowledge. So yeah, for sure. Steven, I'm really interested to know, you've been around the league since the beginning of it, since the league was founded in 2016, and the first season was 2017. So I guess what's the biggest difference you see between kind of where things started and where we are now with the National Arena League coming up in 2025?
I think the biggest thing is I think a great example is that I think the NAL is now at a point where we're able to prove that indoor football and arena football can work together and make a successful product. I think we started that last year as a pilot program, and then this year we're now thriving. Number of teams, number of viewership, the following has grown of the NAL, which is great. I'm not saying that we didn't have a great following in the past. We've had a great following all the way through. But I think the NAL now versus the NAL that I got in 2017, I think is a hybrid of indoor and arena football. Arena football foundation, but a indoor roof. And then a mixture of both from the living room to the kitchen and things like that. I started in arena football. So I worked with the AFL, the real AFL, back when we had ESPN, ESPN2, And then we had games that we had multiple broadcast networks covering us because it was the home team was exclusive with Fubo or whatever the sport was, but the game was still being broadcasted nationwide through CBS and things like that. And so my first arena football game actually was the LA Kiss, the Jacksonville Sharks at the LA Kiss. And I got to see Gene Simmons and, the Kiss band and everything like that perform as their pregame show. And so I was like, NFL or not, this is incredible. Like, yeah. I'm going back to our hotel after the game, and Tiger Jones of the Jacksonville Sharks is on ESPN in my hotel room for top 10 plays. And so I was like, oh, this is arena football. This always was. Now going, months and years later, I started to figure out like it's not always going to be like this, kid. Like, you're not in Hollywood anymore. You're in Columbus, Georgia, or you're in Shreveport, Louisiana now, and things like that. But that doesn't take away from the game itself. So, TV and broadcast is not everything. Hype is not everything. I think the NAL has really proven that it has a really cool, unique game. We're not 100% into the indoor game. We're not running the football every single play, which I joke with some of my IFL friends and things like that. We have Arena Football Foundation and we have Arena thing, but the majority of the teams that are in our league are indoor teams. And we use a lot of indoor terminology and things like that. Yeah, there's AFL Flash and the NAL Flash with the deuce and things like that. And I think one of the things I'm proud of keeping is that we make kickers important, because kickers are people too. And so I think our game really proves that a kicker could be the difference between you winning and losing a game. If we eliminate that from the sport, why not just have my offensive lineman just kick line drives like it's backyard football, and I'll just go for 2 every play. And then now we're talking about, less professional football. And so I think the NAL is a great prototype of why indoor and arena football can work together. And look at the players and coaches. They come from both backgrounds, and look how well we're able to compete. So I think that's the biggest difference this year compared to past seasons, where you were looking at a league in 2017 that was arena football heavy. Going into 2020, we were like, we'll take anybody because of the pandemic. And now looking into 2023, it was majority indoor. And now you're seeing more with the Columbus Lions coming back. You're seeing more arena football coming back into the league as well. So I think we're a really good melting pot of why this sport deserves to have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, definitely. As a fan, it's really cool to see too, because, when I was growing up, all we had was arena football, just like the AFL, the original AFL, Kurt Warner and Iowa Barnstormers and all those teams, right? Like where I grew up in Iowa, that's what we had. And we didn't really have another option. And then all of a sudden in the early 2000s, this new thing this indoor football stuff came into being. And, when they had it over in Sioux City, and then they had it in Omaha, and then they had it in other places around the area. So, so it was pretty cool to see. But I remember a lot of fun games that I saw as a kid, watching Kurt Warner and some of those guys, and just watching them all play. But Jim, how did you get involved in the indoor football game?
Where do I begin is the question. Fan of the sport for 24 plus years, when it back in the real AFL days, where you had the Predators and the Storm and the War in I-4, when you had the Grand Rapids Rampage, the Los Angeles Avengers, the New York Dragons. That's when I fell in love with it, because back then football was good for me. Like, the Jaguars were elite in 2000 and 1999 era, before the downfall.
That was like Mark Brunell, right?
Yeah. Florida State was on the peak, and I was like, I was in high school. I played football. I love football. So my dad took me to a game, and boom, I got hooked with the game, and always wanted to be a part of the league. I wasn't, as big, as strong to even have a chance to play in the sport. And many years later, this sport had a few shows out there, some podcasts, some YouTube channels, and they all decided to, when the real AFL folded in 2019, they all disappeared. They all turned their back on the sport. And myself and one of my former colleagues, you know him very well, Steve, and
Yep.
Zach, we were avid fans of the sport, and we decided to launch this podcast. And we were just doing audio. We were on Spotify, Podbeam, the early stages, and our first episode got like 240 downloads. And it was going back to the episode and listen to it. I'm like, that's the worst podcast I ever heard in my freaking life.
Yeah.
It was so awful, but it was the start. And we decided to cover the NAL. And for me, as a fan of the NAL, because I was a season ticket holder with the Jacksonville Sharks, I go to every Sharks game. I knew a lot about the organizations in 2017. I knew about the Columbus Lions, I knew about the Jacksonville Sharks, I knew about the High Country Grizzlies, the Dayton Wolfpack. There's a lot of teams.
You
Lehigh
saw
Valley
where players
Steel.
went too, and I
Yeah.
think like that's what I like about. I like the individuals, like seeing the stories of like Rez in Carolina. You remember that? Now he's with Wheeling, and like how that unfolds and everything
Correct.
like that. And honestly, I was on this patio with me, you, and Zach and Chris Siegfried on a conference call, and we were literally pitching our idea of this show
Correct.
years ago. And we were like, like, can we make this official? Like, can this be the official podcast? What are the pros? What are the cons? And, things like that. And you guys proved your work. I'm like, there's nothing else I can say. As the media guy, I was just like, I highly suggest this. And honestly, just watch these episodes, like watch the player insight. Look at how much this benefits the players and coaches to have a platform to speak. That's not a team platform. You don't have to go to JacksonvilleSharks.com. You don't have to go to Omaha Beef. Like, the NAL is producing this as a whole, and we want all of the fans of all these individual teams to come to one place.
Correct.
This is that. And then we're doing it. We're still doing it. But I remember saying, like, and Chris Siegfried was like, are you sure? And I was like, 100%. And I probably risked a lot of things saying 100%. But for this, you and Zach proven enough to the point where I was willing to put my reputation on the line. And I was like, 100%, give him a chance. And then we were like, hey, pop the champagne, guys. Episode 1 coming in a week. And then look at how many years later this has developed. Through the good times, through the bad times, through the nosedive times where we were like, this is scary. Yep. You guys never gave up. And that's a credit to Zach as much as it is you on those early days. But like we pulled through it together, and now look how much of a following we have. And I'm not even surprised when people are like, man, we got 1,000 views. We got 2,000 views. I'm like, we were supposed to. This is what we thought about 4 years ago or whatever, how many years ago it was.
Well, again, 100%. That's a gamble. You never go 100% on a non-proven individual. Yeah. But again, like every indoor community and every indoor sport and every indoor organization, there's always a massive transition. About this time, about a year and a half ago, Inside the Walls podcast evolved into a creation that we are now calling Inside the Walls Network that's associated with multiple organizations. And Matt joined the fold with his podcast, Prime Cuts of Omaha Beef.
He beefed it up.
He beefed it up, yeah. I can say that with Siegfried's permission, and I got to give credit to Steve Kern, Josh Blair, the former owner of the Columbus Lions, Coach Resinalo, Coach Manas of Albany, and there's a couple other individuals I like, Jeff Levesque up in Albany. There's a couple other individuals in the NAL at that time that literally were like, yeah, give these guys, they know what they're doing, and that set it off. And just like
if you
and
do
Matt,
the work, right? If you do the work and people see it, it doesn't matter. Like, I know the league got burnt in the past with individual podcasts and things like that. And like, do we want to trust them with the keys to the car? And I was like, if I'm going to trust anyone, even talking to teams, I was like, Jim doesn't work for a team. Zach doesn't work for a team. And look what they did.
Balloons.
What was that? That was weird.
Is that a congratulations thing?
I have
I
no
don't know.
idea.
I
I
don't
know
know.
that's something new.
It's some
I
kind of
guess I
feature.
said something great, maybe.
It's
Celebrate.
just some kind of feature. I thought maybe it was because you went like this.
Oh, maybe.
Don't know.
Does StreamYard do something that we don't know? That's interesting.
It's some weird feature.
I like to
within
bring new
StreamYard
technology
now,
to different platforms, so that might be one of the new ones. I just wasn't aware of it. AI is taking over, guys.
True.
so.
But since the dawn of Inside the Walls podcast, people like you asked Matt, why did I start this? It was actually joint between me and Zach. Zach still has the same passion. He's doing it with, I don't know what he's doing, but he's continuing it with another league that I have no association with. He has his goals, but I thought I replaced a void there because all the shows and podcasts I covered the indoor game turned their back on the players and the coaches and the teams like they never existed. And the NAL had an empty void. And people say, well, it's because of the pandemic. You just left, period. Like, even when the launch came back in 2001, no one was there. Me and Zach started it. We found a niche, 164 episodes. Matt joined 1 year ago. Then Jeff joined a couple months ago. And now we have the Carolina Cobras Coaches Show. We have Prime Cuts of Omaha Beef. We have the William Miners Show, who's the #1 show on the network. This show with the NAL. It's amazing, like you said, hard work. And what people don't realize is in this sport, there's no one coming down with a bricks truck. You got to work your butt off on multiple projects to even gain a foot because that's how the sport is. And for me,
take 10 years. Who knows?
For me, I don't really care. I love the game. Like I to this day, I respect Coach Resinalo and the William Miners organization of bringing me from Jacksonville to Willing the past year for the championship game in Willing. It was so epic. Those are the things I work for, to experience those moments. I'm not like, I love the sport too much to try to make money off of it. And when I got that mindset in, it's like, do it for the players, do it for the coaches. You'll get so much more respect in this industry because people will trust you. And I've had people, even Coach Manas and multiple coaches behind scenes say, the reason why that people respect me in this sport is because they know I'll put a good product forward and they know that I'll present it in a way with passion and not just doing it to just, say that I'm the only one that does this. And that's why I do. Right. So that's a long answer to your question, Matt, but that's how I got into it. Am I going away? No.
There are some people that wish you would, I'm sure, but they can't have that.
Fine, I'll go away then.
No,
I'll be honest too, guys. Like, working from a team level, it's great when, like, as a media guy, because that's how I started. I worked at the team level, and it's incredible when your team is 10-0, and every interview is easy, and every player wants to come up to you to do interviews. You know what's hard? You know how you know you're a good media guy? Getting content out of players when you're 0-6, and your team just got beat by 30, and you can still pull off a real interview with your coach, and your coach does not say, like, hey, I'm not going to answer that, or can we do this later, or whatever. Like, man, I'm really fortunate. I got like, I had James Fuller, Sia Burley. I had so many great coaches that I got to work for, right? Like, I had so many, and not even the head coaches, like even the coordinators and stuff that I would lean on when, like, based on availability and things like that. Like, no one ever turned me down. And I don't think that's true in the NFL. Like, there's times where there's protocols and things like that where they're not available. But, like, with the NAL, I really got to exercise, like, what I'm capable of as far as the media in the media world. And then working at the league level, I got to see what I'm capable of at a streaming level and a broadcast level of, like, what can we pull off? Because at working for the league level, your job is to make sure all the teams are at the same level. You don't want the haves and the have-nots. And I'll be honest, even in the old AFL, I noticed that. Like, I knew when I was in Portland, and I knew when I was in Philadelphia. And I'm not going to say who was better or worse. I'm just saying, like, you knew when you were in a big team that put a lot of money into the product and they were doing everything. And then working in the NAL, it was like we were hanging on at first just to get through the first couple of years. So it was the Wild West. But then as we started to fine tune the product of the league, I noticed that we needed to make sure all the teams were at the same bar. Every team streams their games no matter what, regardless of broadcast level. Every team has social media. Every team is going to, produce news and things like that. That's at the end of the day, that's my goal, is make sure all the teams are equal. Yeah, sure, some teams do better than the others, but there's no team that doesn't perform. And that's not easy, guys. And now with so many teams in the league, it makes my job even harder. But at the same time, I treat everybody the same. Like, I don't care if you've been in the league for 11 years or if you've been in the league for 4 years or if this is your first season. I'm going to make sure you get everything that you need done. And at the same time, as a media guy for a team, I still rely on at the league level, I still rely on the same thing. Like, I still rely on owners and I still rely on the front office to perform. One of my favorite projects was Colorado, the Spartans. I thought they did a great job their first year. And the reason I think they did a great job is because they were so open to communication and suggestions and things like that, of like how to make things better and how to, communicate. Like, Colorado really put in a good effort. Now, they didn't win the championship at the end of the year. Matt knows that. But they did a really, really good job of getting through the season by working with me and working with they were so league conscious. They weren't selfish, I guess the best way to explain it. And they relied on my advice and things like that. And like stuff like that can matter. Like when you have assets like and resources that have been with the league since 2017, I encourage you guys to use it. And a lot of teams do. Like Rez knows and Carolina knows and Sioux City knows and things like that, and Omaha knows. But when you got guys like Ricky Burtz with the beef, like, you already have Tom Brady. Like, I don't need to tell Tom Brady how to throw a football. You know what I mean? So I let Omaha do their thing. But every once in a while, I'll say like, hey, when you won your trophy, wouldn't it be better if the camera was on the other side of the podium so everyone can see your faces instead of your backs? I know Ricky's watching, so I'm giving him crap. But hey, those are things that we can improve on for this year. And so that's why I'm around, really, is to just make things better. I want every year to go like this for the NAL. And I think we have. Number of teams does not define the success of a league. Number of retention and number of viewership and number of attendance is what matters. When we get Toyota and we get, Nike and things like that, at the end of the day, they're going to ask, for statistics. You can show them championship rings. You can show them like, oh, my game got this many views. But at the end of the day, they are going to, I see you, Ricky. At the end of the day, they're going to say like, give me your average viewership of every game. Give me your average attendance per league, not team. They're going to want to know those resources and things. And if you don't deliver and you go, hey, we'll get that to you later, but in the meantime, let me show this off to you. Like, you already killed yourself. You know what I mean? So I think I helped prepare the league for hopefully the future of that. Like, and Jim knows that. I want us to have Offensive Player of the Week brought to you by U.S. Army. Defensive Player of the Week brought to you by One Blood. You know what I mean? Or, one of those things that are national that people rely on. Like, people, recruiting is nationwide. Voting is nationwide. Education, for example, is nationwide. There's a lot of room for us to grow as a league for things like that. And I think, I think we can build that platform. And I think I have a lot of great ideas and things like that that can contribute.
Sorry, I'm paying attention, but I'm also paying attention to the comments. It gets hysterical in here sometimes.
Like I said, you just started it.
Hey, it's been a while since I've been on. So and I'm kind of like one of those actors that like goes away for 5 years and then comes back. So, this is rare. And Jim, honestly, I don't want to spoil this, but like maybe we do take another year before I jump back on an episode.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, sounds good. So
that doesn't hurt my feelings because it was a year since the last time you were on.
It was. I think this time, right? Because we were like, everything's okay. Everything's okay now. It's crazy. I know, and it was really kind of a cheers for me and Jim when I pitched the idea for the show, because I told him, I was like, think of where we were last year. This time last year, the league was struggling, and like you know, I think we've grown a lot, and it's worth celebrating. You know, I know every year, every month is tension and everything like that, and we got to get through the season. And I'm not saying that this is going to be the best season in league history, but I'm saying like there's a lot of great accomplishments, and I think sometimes we get lost in that with comparing ourselves to other leagues. Let's just be ourselves and celebrate the fact that this is the most teams we've ever had in league history. And we're on a track to success. I'm not saying that we're going to finish with success. I'm just saying right now, it's worth acknowledging that the league has grown a lot, and that maybe it's not a bad idea that it's not crazy that we combined arena football foundations with indoor philosophies.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things too, is everybody talked about in the offseason, like, oh, what's next to the NAL? And then there was some talk about expansion, and then we got the teams that came in from the AIF, and everybody was skeptical, and like, oh, they're going too big, too fast, and all that stuff. And but if we look at it, like, there's not a single league in this industry that doesn't have turmoil every year. I mean, one of our other leagues that are involved, the indoor football league just had a few teams that had to take a hiatus for a little bit, so it's not like this is a neutral thing. But I want to change gears for a minute, right? You've been around for a long time. Jim's been around for a long time. So Jim, your answer to this next question cannot be the Jacksonville Sharks. Okay. Steven and Jim. Steven, you first, then Jim. What former NAL team would you like to see someday come back to the NAL? I figured that would be your answer.
What do you say, Steve? The Mammoths? Because you had the shirt on?
Well, but I understand the politics of it. It's not as easy, and Ricky's watching, so Ricky knows this. Like, just because something worked once or 1 year doesn't mean it's sustainable. Like, and that's not a knock against Maine. It's expensive. The Northeast is expensive. Talk to my friends with the Massachusetts Pirates. Talk to the Albany Empire. It is expensive to operate. I literally watched a team that was very successful get pushed to another state just to practice for insurance reasons and things like that. Like, and I get it. Again, remember when I said, like, every time I interview a player, I think in their shoes first before I ask the question. Like, when I even criticize like a team or anything like that, like, I get it from the arena's perspective too. Like, I love you guys, but I'm not going to break state laws to let you guys practice. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to lose my job to let your kicker practice field goals on a Saturday just because he doesn't know that that's against the law without, permission and things like that. Like, it's as much as I would like, okay, let's say money is not an option, then it would be the Maine Mammoths. Absolutely. But I understand how expensive it is to operate in certain states and things like that, in certain foundations. But when it comes to fan base, media support, attendance, and honestly how the team performed their first year in the NAL, like, the Maine Mammoths were phenomenal to watch. And a lot of it was, and Jim knows, former Shark players that wanted to find a new home, and they did really well there. And some of them, like guys like Devin Wilson, there's a number of players that played with the Mammoths. They found their way back to the Sharks. The Mammoths were a proving ground. But honestly, it was just cool. It was a cool city that really, in 1 year, not even a year, because when I was there, they were only there for so many months. I'd never seen so much TV, local radio, local news, personal, businesses that just wanted to support the team. And then it just, unfortunately, for many reasons that are uncontrollable by ownership, uncontrollable by the league, but maybe could be considered more political, just it could not be feasible to keep a team there. I'm hoping that changes, but like, that's a great example of like a team that really made it in year one. And there's the NAL has a lot of year one teams too that I'm really excited about it as well. But I think the Mammoths are a good team to mention.
Yeah. Jim?
Can it be an active team or no?
Sure.
San Antonio. That's an easy question.
That's my favorite city to visit. Yeah.
That's a good run organization. Good people run that organization, even the original organization there. But for a team that no longer exists, that played in the NAL, Lehigh Valley.
Ooh, good one. that was the my favorite arena for our game. Like it was the perfect size arena. It always looked packed. It was loud, and I'm not a gambling person, but it was cool that it was connected to a casino. I know a lot of my coworkers and owners and things like that. They enjoyed that. Lehigh also was a really competitive team too.
Oh, that's where Darius Prince played, Warren Smith Jr.
Yep. I just
Good
called him
fan
Warren.
base too. They had a very good fan base there too. But again, like other teams in this sport, local politics gets involved, and that's how some of these teams don't survive, is because of the stuff behind the scenes, not the performance or the team itself. But yeah.
You know a fun fact about Warren Smith? So you remember he was with the Albany Empire? This is how good of a person he is. I didn't work for the Empire, I worked for the league, but we played the Empire, I think, in the playoffs or towards the end of the season with the Sharks. And Warren bought all of our guys, like the Sharks players and stuff. He bought all of us drinks. And he's a veteran, like he's a veteran player. He bought all of our guys drinks and just like, welcome to Albany, and he hadn't had like that much loyalty to Albany. I feel like that was his first or second year with the Empire, or yeah, I think so. And but Warren was such a great guy. And then when I talked to him, you know what he said to me? It wasn't like about the NAL. It wasn't about football or like anything I got wrong as a media guy. Because that's what I was thinking. Like when he first approached me, like, hey, can I talk to you? I'm like, oh shoot, did I get your stats wrong? Did I do an interview that was negative towards you? He was like, are you friends with Chris Sweeney? And I'm like, what? I'm like, that's one of my college friends. Actually going to the Vikings Jaguars game this weekend. And he goes, yeah, he's from my hometown in New Jersey. We played basketball together. My dad was his coach or whatever, Warren Smith's dad. And I was like, holy crap, yeah. Chris Sweeney's one of my fraternity brothers. We met in college. My friend Chris is from New Jersey, so that's probably how you guys know each other. Because, yeah, when I added you on Facebook, or when you added me, it said we had like a mutual friend, and that was the mutual friend. And that's how I know how you guys know each other. So, like, as much as we get wrapped up in the sport, we all have personal lives and we all have personal friendships. And it was cool that we made that connection. And then me and Warren have been really tight ever since. So, but I'll never forget that. Like, I don't even know if he was the starting quarterback of Albany that year or not, but the fact that he went out of his way, that was pretty cool.
He's still a teacher, right? In Jersey?
And coach. Yeah. Lacey County, I think, is his hometown. I think he still coaches there. And I met his fiance at the time, but now they're married. Yep. And she's the basketball coach, I think. If he's watching, he'll correct me.
It's a small world, Matt.
But there you go. It just shows the small world of sports, and we all have personal lives, and like win or lose, whatever. But it was like, hey, it's cool that we know each other. Like we know someone in common, So it's cool to interact with the guys and not have to talk about that I got a fact wrong or a stat wrong.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So looking back at the history of the league, what I think is kind of cool is you look at it and you see that teams like the Columbus Lions and the Jacksonville Sharks have been to 3 National Arena League championship games, and then Carolina's been to 4. And so, how cool is it from your perspective, Stephen, and even Jim, for you too? Like, how cool is it that we get teams like Columbus coming back to the league this year to start playing in 2025 again?
Oh, it's well, I don't mean to interrupt Jim, but I think it's a great foundation, and it forms new rivalries. Like I remember working for the Sharks as a media guy, like the Columbus Lions were our rival. And now I think we see that with Carolina and Columbus as like NAL rivals. And I always know, like, regardless of changes within organizations, like Columbus always brings a competitive product. They're in a market where like football really matters. They're on the Alabama border and the Georgia border. It's football town. Like there's no other sport. And Jim knows I'm good friends with Jason Gibson, who was the former coach of Columbus. almost won the very first NAL championship from an away team, which hasn't happened yet. Still, and the Omaha Beef did not let it happen this year. But I think the closest we ever got to a visiting team winning a championship game was Columbus Lions. So NAL fans are going to get that Columbus Lions competitiveness back this year, and I'm really excited for that.
Oh, the fumble. Oh, Mason Espinosa, the 2 bad knees and the fumble that cost the Columbus Lions the game. And I keep saying this: if
thank
Mason
God for
would've got
Jeremiah Price.
Yeah, if Mason Espinosa would have got that snap, Columbus would have won the championship. The guy was open in the end zone; no one was around him. Jacksonville took a gamble, won the gamble, won the game.
Yeah.
So, what you want me to answer that question too, Matt?
Yeah.
Oh, it's good having the Columbus Lions back. They're how can you say, one of the longest. I think they're the 3rd longest running organization in the sport, behind Sioux City and Omaha.
Hey, the center fumbled the snap, by the way. Wasn't Mason Espinosa.
Sorry, Coach Rez.
I remember because Rez mentioned it, but also Jason Gibson always tells me I was a snap fumble, meaning the center. I was a snap fumble away from winning the NAL championship. He ended up winning one eventually, so yeah.
With who though?
Yeah.
Jacksonville. Columbus
Moneyball.
Columbus is a organization that's been around 2001, 2002. They've been around almost 20 years. They've actually no, I'm thinking of Omaha's been around 24 years, 25 years. The Lions, they have a tradition unlike any other organization. They know how to win. They win wherever they go. The organization is built. Right now, it's Casey Smith, who's behind it all this time. They have a good fan base, military background with their fan base, and they know how to get local players from Auburn and Georgia and Troy University and Florida State, and they build a good organization year in and year out. And in Columbus, having them back just really solidifies the NAL as one of the 2 major leagues in this sport. So you got 3 founding organizations in Sioux City, Omaha, and Columbus. That really puts a good stamp on what type of organization the NAL is. And we saw the addition of a willing organization this offseason that just adds to that. But having Columbus back as one of the originally founding members of the NAL with Jacksonville back in 2017, it's just like that the story coming back full circle. They come back to finish the story, not taking the pun from the WWB there, Matt. But that's what the Lions are. They're coming back. And one thing about the Lions, and I know a lot of Lion fans may be watching this or catch this later on podcast, but Lions have the people have been saying, a lot of fans that cover the sport or watch the sport, the Columbus Lions are the NAL's version of the Buffalo Bills. They win a lot. They get in the playoffs. When they get to the championship game, they just can't get over the hump. But Columbus is that type of organization. You have to keep knocking on the door. Eventually, you're going to break through it. And that's that organization in Columbus. And having them with the NAL, in my opinion, just cements how the NAL has come over the last 3 or 4 seasons. How this league has been over the last 3 or 4 seasons, Steve, since the pandemic almost, and having them come back to join the NAL just really creates a stronger league from the East Coast side of this league, but the overall landscape of the NAL.
And don't play them on military night. If you're unfamiliar, so Columbus, Georgia is right by a major military base. And so they get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of recruits and military active members to generals that will fill that arena for military night. I remember when I was with the Sharks, they purposely picked their military night when we played them at home in Columbus, and it was packed. I'm talking military chants, like they're, and Rez will correct me like the terminology, but like they would do their own individual chants for whatever individual group that they were part of, and it was loud. And then we're talking full uniform. They're wearing military boots and they're stomping in the arena, and there's not one empty seat. They want to make that environment heavy and strong. And so, if you're an NAL team, and you face them on military night, good luck, because it was tough. And even from a media perspective, trying to do interviews while those chants are going on, because they often happen when the players were not on the field, like when we were at halftime and things like that, they would just go off, and it was loud. That's a great football arena too. So
It's a military town, that is for sure. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so I guess my next thing that I wanted to ask is, which of these new markets, if there is one that you're most excited about seeing come back to the indoor football game or the arena football game, because we're seeing some markets that we haven't seen in quite a while with Amarillo and Beaumont and Shreveport, things like that. So are there any of those that you're specifically excited to see, or are you just kind of excited to see them all?
Jim, you go first.
Oh, that's an easy answer for me. It's basically Shreveport. Louisiana, that's a football state. They love football. Doesn't matter what version of it is, and knowing the organization and the ownership group that's established there, and from what I've been hearing, that fan base is ready to get this thing going. Beaumont, Amarillo has history. Beaumont's that new organization. Beaumont is in Texas, another football state. That's when you look at the chart. Is it God Family Football or Football God Family? You got to figure out where football is in that category in the state of Texas. But you look at Beaumont, they got a new owner who has connections with the Mass Pirates. So they're putting together a good team. But for some odd reason, when your team name is called the Rubaroo and it's a mythical beast that just hunts things at night, that gets my attention. I'm like, okay. But they also have a legendary head coach there who's won multiple championships in the original AFL. The guy knows how to win, and I expect them to be a fan base enthusiastic and an organization that's looking to start the 2025 season with a winning tradition. And I have a feeling that's a Shreveport. Now, Amarillo and Beaumont, it's Texas. You start winning, people will come because it's football in Texas. What else is new, right? Steve?
Wheeling Miners. I mean, we were talking about, proving yourself and things like that. Wheeling's already done that in another league. When it comes to indoor and arena football, it's like, where do you want to play? And recruiting is big. And I remember one of our best recruiting years in Jacksonville is when we were like right out by the beach, and players know players, if you know what I mean. And so I've never seen a better turnout for tryouts, midseason trades, when Jacksonville showed off like what a gorgeous place they got to live when they were out by Jack's Beach. And that was the 2019 season we won a championship, the Jonathan Bain era and everything like that. I think Wheeling's a gorgeous place to live. I think Wheeling has all the recruiting tools. I think Wheeling has a NAL coach that's been in this league and knows how to win. And they haven't lost yet as an organization, and they don't look like a 2-year-old organization. Like when you watch their games from last year, they look like they've been around for like 4 or 5 years. Like they're operated really well. I think they recruit really well as far as players. And I think Rez has what it takes to really make a impact on the NAL with the Wheeling Miners. Mm-hmm. I think the Wheeling Miners are his passion project, I guess is the best way to say it. So, yeah, I'm going to say Wheeling Miners, and there's no question. I mean, now let me say one more thing about Louisiana, because I got so jealous when I got hired by the Jacksonville Sharks. The New Orleans Voodoo were in the AFL when I looked it up. And I was like, oh, I can't wait, because I knew my role was a traveling role with the Arena Football League. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get to go to New Orleans. And, like, sure enough, in that offseason, New Orleans folded. Then I got hired with the Jacksonville Jaguars, And guess who was on our schedule for Thursday Night Football? The New Orleans Saints. And then literally my boss tells me these are your 4 or 5 because we in technology we don't go to all the away games. We split it up, between the people in our department.
Mm-hmm.
So that year it was a 2-way split. And my boss goes, "Yeah, you're going to Cleveland, awesome. Dallas, Houston." So I did all the Texas teams. Where else did I go? Sorry, I'm having a brain fart.
Just rub it in.
Yeah, right. We Houston, Dallas,
Indy,
correct.
London.
Anyways, yeah, London. Oh yeah, London doesn't really count, but yeah, I got to go to London. But as far as NFL stadiums, I was like, oh, and he mentioned I'm gonna get to go to New Orleans, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And then he was like, hey, Steven, I have to work Florida, Georgia, which is Jim knows. Jim knows. That's a very big deal. It's the only event that goes past our capacity. We add seats for Florida, Georgia. So it's not a Jaguars capacity event. It's a Jaguar plus capacity event. So he's like, I can't go to the I can't go to the Pittsburgh game. I'm going to take the New Orleans trip on Thursday Night Football. You're going to do Pittsburgh, which ended up being a great trip and everything like that. But I'm like, twice in my life, I got robbed out of Louisiana. And so I'm hoping Todd or somebody with the league will, or maybe you're right and Shreveport ends up hosting the championship and I get to finally go to Louisiana for a championship. But I was twice in my life, I got robbed from going to New Orleans. And it's like, I love Cajun food. I want to get to go to that environment. One of my former interns and a former Carolina Cobra employee work for the New Orleans Saints. So I know I can get the best out of the opportunity. Just for some reason, Louisiana's not in my future, but no, I'm going to go Wheeling Miners for teams to look out for this season.
And of course, with me talking about Louisiana, as you know, you can watch the Through the Wire Coaches Show every Wednesday night here on Inside the Walls Network. Coach Rez, I have to share a spotlight throughout the league, man. I can't just talk about Willing 100% of the time.
Well, what's the name of your show on with Willing? I'm curious. I didn't hear you mention it. Oh, there you go.
What else do I do? I do too many things, man. How many things do I do now?
Rez texted me hey, make sure we get the promotions.
I do 4 shows now.
Yeah, it's 4 or 5. I don't know. It's way too many.
Yeah.
Watch him.
I just know that every time I talk to Jim, he's like, "Yeah, we got somebody else interested in coming on the thing," and I said on the network, and I'm like, "Yeah, but who's going to be the host?" And he's like, "Oh, they're going to have their own." And then 2 weeks later, it's like, "Well, I guess I'm stepping in for a minute." Dude, come on. So, but when you love the game, that's kind of
it comes with the territory. Right? So, it comes with the territory. Yep.
Yeah. So, Steven, just really quick, any kind of advice that you have for, anybody that's maybe thinking about getting into, this podcasting type, media type venture? Maybe they're connected to a team in the league and they just don't know how to, how to bring that up and all that kind of stuff or whatever. So tissues for me. Yeah, we'll see. But they don't know how to get started with that or how to approach the team about it. Like any kind of ideas or any kind of advice for someone like that?
Yeah, resilience. Like I said, I'm a product of perseverance. Just because year 1 you get turned down doesn't mean you'll get turned down year 2. Me and Jim know that with this show. We couldn't pitch this right away. Jim had to prove, Jim and Zach had to prove themselves. And so same thing with me. With my career, it's been a long road, but don't give up. You may be 3 months away from getting what you want. Just keep pushing. And that goes as well as podcasters as it does with players. I feel like we live in a very faith-based industry where it was I'm good this year, but what am I going to do next year? It's just stick to what you're doing well, focus on that, and just keep pushing. There might be a rough year, but just persevere through it and see what happens.
For sure, yeah. I think the other thing that you talked about earlier that's really a big thing is being reliable and being trustworthy too.
Yeah.
Making sure that you live. Jim and I talk about that all the time off air about just being trustworthy and being somebody that owners and leagues know that they can trust you when they come to you with information and things like that.
And
so
to be honest with you guys, and it just popped in my head, and I apologize, like I didn't say it sooner. I must have been given, and this is like as real as I can get. I must have been given 100 reasons why I should quit or why I shouldn't do this, or like get a real job. You know what I mean? Stop doing all the fun stuff with football and get a real job. I must have been given 100 reasons why I shouldn't. I probably only had 10 reasons why to stick with it, but I stuck with those 10, and now no one ever talks to me about the 100 things like years ago, like 4, 6, 8 years ago. I never get anyone that pulls me aside and being like, hey, I don't think this is the right thing for you to be doing, or like, hey, like I can see you're struggling. Like that doesn't happen anymore. So as long as you just stick to like what you believe in, I really believe if you really put enough time into it and you really care, and honestly, people always think of fear as a negative thing. Fear's been one of the most positive things in my life because I've highly feared not being able to financially make it. Fear of like not professionally making it, fear of not making this all work out. If you let fear drive you, as a motivation, it can take you to a lot of great places, with, in the NAL, but also at higher levels. If you just care enough and you're willing to tune out the 100 reasons why you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, and it's easy to say like, you're right, but it's very hard to be like, to ignore people and even people that you care about, that could be family or friends. But if you really believe in what you're doing, like put all your effort into it and see what happens. And like I said, like I'm a resort of, and Jim knows this from knowing my background. I'm definitely a example of serious perseverance and serious luck.
yeah. So, we're getting ready to wrap up here in just a few minutes. But for you, Stephen, one of the things I wanted to ask you specifically is your favorite thing about working for the Jaguars and your favorite thing about working with the National Arena League.
Ooh. I like the National Arena League. That's a really good question. I like that I get to work with every individual team. Like I have every team's number, the owner or the general manager or the coach, or in some cases all three. I like that the NAL gives me the ability to test the grounds and help establish things and keep improving things, because I feel like they wouldn't keep me around if I wasn't worth their time. But I feel like after all this time, I feel like the last of the Mohicans, because everyone that I worked with in 2017 has either moved on or died. Sadly, I mean that in the most respectful way. And you mentioned Kurt Warner, but did you know our first commissioner of the NAL was his coach? Yeah. Portrayed in the movie and everything like that. But yeah, he was the head coach of the Iowa Barnstormers. So I've gotten to work with a lot of great commissioners. I've gotten to work with a lot of great owners from teams that are still in the league or not in the league, regardless, that trusted my opinion and valued my thoughts in fields that I'm not an expert in sometimes. But I know what works and what doesn't work. And I think my job is to prevent people to make mistakes that were made in 2018, 2017, and make sure that those mistakes are not made in 2023 and 2024, simply by ignorance of like, oh, I didn't know. Like, no, that is a big problem. Like, don't do it that way. And I'm not trying to be super technical. I'm just being broad. I think with the Jaguars, my favorite thing is the platform of getting to work on the NFL level, getting to work with other NFL professionals and non-NFL professionals. I work in a technology industry where the products are the team. So the headphones that you wear, the shoulder pads that you wear, the equipment that you put on, like all that stuff is a winning advantage. And so my job in technology is to make sure that the Jaguars are in the top 10% of NFL teams that are over exceeding expectations based on the technology that we purchase, because it is a team expense. And so my job is to make sure everything's working, whether we're in London or we're in, hell, let's just say it again, Dallas. Let's say we're in Dallas, making sure that all of our equipment is working and functioning, and it's working at the level that our coaches can understand. It's user friendly. We call NFL coaches middle schoolers as far as patience. You know what I mean? They don't care how things work. Does it work or does it not? You know what I mean? And it's not an insult. It's true. It's professional. They want to show up. They want to grab the device and they want it to work instantly. They don't want to have to deal with extra hurdles and things like that. And so we have to make sure that all the technology is at an 8th grade level. You know what I mean? In my sense, in my background. And so I feel like I'm doing I feel like I do a good job at making sure that the equipment and what we buy is user friendly, but also the best in the league.
So are you part of the group that makes sure like the communication to the quarterback is working?
So remember I told you pre-interview,
yeah.
My future position, one of my future positions with the team is when we go to London and Trevor Lawrence, for example, picks up the phone and talks to the offensive coordinator. Like my job is to make sure that connectivity works, that they can communicate and things like that. That's a good example.
Okay. I was just curious because like you hear about how they have those things in the helmet, and I'm like, I don't know how they can ever hear any of that stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I'm always
well,
curious,
there's noise cancellation technology, but then I've also heard of near facing, where it's like, which is really cool technology, and I could go forever on this, and I know we're wrapping it up, but there's technology now that is noise cancellation, but it can detect something that's within your ear range. So if someone taps you on the shoulder and talks, it'll enable audio because of distance, which is cool. Like that's pretty cool. And you'll see commercials of it in 2025. So I go to with the Jaguars, I go to all these really cool tech conferences, and it's cruel because it shows you what the future is going to unveil. And it's like, you can't test drive it, you can't touch it, but hey, 2025, 2026, you're going to see this everywhere, like Tesla and things like that. Like it's going to be everywhere, but like we can't give it to you now. You can't even hold it because it's not for sale. We're still determining the prices, but we'll let you listen really quick as a demo. And I'm like, this is really cool. We're like, I'm in a library. I can't hear anything, but if someone becomes within my ear range and talks, it will instantly detect that there's physical nature, and I can hear that person say like, hey, like be quiet, or hey, whatever. So there's really cool, like technology is always on the incline. Like I'm very encouraged. And also that's one of my roles with the NAL is making sure that we're top of the line of like things that we can do and things we can afford. So I think I'm on the front lines of that for the league, which is it's a privilege, but also something that I like inspire to make sure that I'm always keeping on the top of my game to make sure that happens. So there's a lot of cool things in the future. If you're impressed with the NAL now, check out the NAL in 2 years from now.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Stephen. It's been great chatting with you and getting to know a little bit more about who you are and how you got involved with the league and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I look forward to getting to meet you someday in person, hopefully.
Absolutely. If Omaha hosts another championship, which I think Ricky's hoping for, I'll probably see you. If not, awesome. Hopefully to get you and Jim at league meetings and things like that. So
yeah, maybe.
Well, don't mention who's hosting the championship. We'll have more coaches in the chat start throwing comments at everybody.
We'll see. Hey, you got to beat the champs to be the champ.
Well, technically, we have 3 champions in the league right now, so
we have 1 NAL champion.
That's true.
Was it Rez? Thought, yeah.
Sorry, Jim. I'll put the finger
for it. I got to make up for it. Yeah.
You put the finger. Never mind.
I usually get yelled at, but
I can't wait to look at my phone and see all the text messages I got from tonight. So I appreciate that. Hopefully I can sleep.
Hey, you
That's
say
why-
you're a night person, so you get used to it.
That's
Oh,
why
I
they
know.
have a do not
I got
disturb
work
button.
to do. So my laptop
So-
is behind my iPhone that's being charged right now. I walked away earlier because I was like, my phone's gonna die.
We've had
Well,
that happen before.
Oh yeah, I don't want to let you guys down. So
Trust me, you're not will be. You
but
won't
my
be the first
MO
one.
ever
you
since
won't
I
be the
worked
last
in
one.
a football, my MO has been like, don't let anyone down, and you'll be okay. You might not go any further than this, but you'll be okay.
But make sure you have a charge phone.
For sure.
The one thing you leave
That's
from
step
this
one.
episode, folks, make sure your phones are charged.
Yeah.
Or if you live in Jacksonville, you go 10 feet, you're out of cell service. That's
Hey,
how it is.
don't put Diet Cokes in your
Freezer.
your freezer ice maker. I learned that the hard way this week. My wife thought I poisoned my kids. She's like, we got brown mold in our freezer. This is a true story. Before we came on this podcast, and I was texting Jim like, yeah, we're having technical difficulties. Like, I got to figure out if I'm going to be in the kitchen or the patio. Anyways, turns out the Diet Coke that I put in the
Explodes.
freezer that I forgot about exploded all
It
over my
froze.
freezer. My wife thought we had mold. And it was just a Diet Coke that exploded, but I had to clean the whole freezer out an hour before this podcast, which is why I'm in my Under Armour Adidas cleaning clothes. So I had to clean our freezer before this. So no matter how far you get,
we won't let anybody know that you wear your mammoth shirt to clean the house. Oh,
I'm
wait.
proud of it.
Oh wait, we're live.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually pretty rare. I think this is like, what do you call it? Retro NAL.
Throwback.
Yeah.
Retro. Yeah. But hey, if you're going to learn some lessons, folks, don't put Diet Cokes in the freezer because it expands, then explodes. You're
Yeah.
glad that you weren't in the freezer when it exploded because that would have caused possibly injury. And always charge your phone. Those are the two things in this episode. You watched an hour and 50 minutes of an episode to realize that you need to have your phone charged and don't put and get more close and personal on the phone. Speaking of phone charging, or put Pepsis and Cokes in freezers.
Yeah, not a good idea.
No. But Steve, it has been an honor, it's a privilege. Again, I'll be talking to you behind the scenes all the time because that's what we do in the league. Everything you see on social media from the NAL, it's not either. It could be me, but mostly it's because of Steve who directs it to all the social media platforms. If you're watching this on the NAL Facebook page or the website, come follow Inside the Walls podcast every Thursday night, 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern. Freaking time change, I swear. Every Thursday night here for the NAL. Next week, we'll get back at the act with, we might take a visit to beef country. We'll announce who the guest will be next week sometime. So, Steve, it's an honor, privilege. I know you got a lot of work to do because you do not just a league, you do multiple teams. Matt, any final words before we exit this evening?
No, I just appreciate the support that you give us, Steve, and look forward to meeting you soon and getting to work with you further.
Hey, Matt, enjoy your NyQuil tonight. Get some rest. I appreciate you powering through. Like, no, seriously, like, it's not easy doing, it could have been easy for you to say no, but you're a good example of perseverance as well. So just keep doing what you're doing and, get better and get rest. We want you at 100%. I appreciate you performing at 80.
Yeah, if I'm even at 80. But yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Jeff will return next week. We'll break down some Omaha beef action, some recent signings, and we'll have a guest on to talk about what's going on over in Omaha starting next week. We are exactly 3 months and 8 days away from toe and hitting leather in the National Arena League. And maybe within the next 2 weeks, you might see where the first location of NAL Game Day will land near an NAL city. Steve, stay on after the end of the break. To the fans out there, please follow us on all social media, including the website. For all information, get your tickets now on your favorite NAL organization. Tickets are on sale league-wide. Without you, they don't exist. Without us, the game will never exist, because that's us. We love the indoor game. That's Matt. That's Steve. And I'm Jim. It's episode 164 of Inside the Walls podcast. We'll see you guys next week.